And so there might be beliefs that we hold about technology or about its either impact on us or its lack of impact on us that are not well-founded beliefs.
Technology is, I think, one of the most difficult issues that we face today as parents in the year 2022. Actually, we've been facing this challenge since we were parents, this is really distracting.
It is, isn't it?
Did you do that on purpose?
Of course I did that on purpose.
Oh my gosh, and your trickery.
It's another brilliant introduction to the Maven Parent Podcast. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Gosh.
And for those of you who are just listening,
I'm done.
And are not watching, if you're watching on YouTube, you noticed I was on my phone, scrolling through my phone, and if
Erin, on your YouTube, if you're on YouTube, you're seeing me roll my eyes at Brett.
Erin kept looking over at me, and then eventually couldn't help it, but said this was really distracting.
I'm just every time you say, Erin, you can start the podcast, I'm just going to say, no, you start it, Brett. You start it. I'm not falling for this anymore. Listeners, this is it.
You actually didn't fall for anything. You were just unbeknownst to you. You were part of my plan to introduce today's topic, which is technology. And you illustrated it brilliantly, Erin.
Yeah, because it's so annoying when you're talking to someone and they're on their phone. And I'm thinking, what are you doing? We have things to talk about. What are you looking up on your phone at this point?
Yeah. But your vast experience with me and seeing my character over time and how I've handled the phone, you should have given me the benefit of the doubt. You should have known, Erin.
I hope people are watching on YouTube so they can see me roll my eyes. They're going to roll out of my head.
If they're listening or watching, so many times. They're like, that couple needs counseling. Don't worry, folks. We were actually in counseling. In fact, we'll talk about this episode with our counselor on Thursday. No, just kidding.
So,
no, this is we are.
My intro was real. That I actually think technology, I thought Brett was going to let me start, but I think technology is one of the most difficult issues we face as parents. And we know that you're feeling that. If you're a parent or a grandparent, or if you're a youth leader who tries to lead youth group on a Sunday morning or a Wednesday night.
Or if you're a grandparent.
I said grandparent.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. Now you're not listening. Are you still distracted by technology?
No, my mind has been shaped by technology that I have a hard time listening.
So yes, grandparents, you're trying to spend time with your grandkids and the phones
we've
and
heard
the screens.
From a lot of grandparents about this.
If you are a teacher,
the bane of your existence
is
as a teacher.
The phone. Actually, I was just at a Christian high school and junior high this week, and I was doing a chapel there, but I saw during the chapel, I guess maybe it was right when it was starting, but teachers going around taking phones from kids. So I'm assuming the kids weren't supposed to have them, but the teachers were taking them. And I was looking at the teacher and I'm just thinking, you poor thing, this is probably what you have to spend way more time on than you want to. And you think about the job of a teacher and how much they have to do. And then this is added on top, which, going back to parents, if you think about all we have to do as parents, all that is on our shoulders as parents, and then you add this new thing of technology, it's pretty new. I mean, our parents had to navigate television and movies. But obviously, with the invention of the cell phone,
you had the first
and the smartphone.
Yeah, the first smartphone I believe was in 2007 when Apple released the iPhone.
Yeah, and we've actually talked about how, as being parents now, 27 years, when we started having to deal with technology as parents, you and I,
we were only 13 years old. Anyone wants to do the math.
We were young, but we were talking about flip phone, a texting. Remember those, everyone? Those, the ones with the text pads on it. That's what our daughter wanted. So even in our years as parenting, it's gotten so much worse. As far as what we have to think through, fight off, navigate together with our kids.
Well, and I think this is a good observation. I think it's good to say this out loud, because I think a lot of parents feel that. Feel that technology has become this big, challenging thing. And yet at the same time, it's all been so normalized. And so we've been socialized to think that this is maybe normal and this is just the way life is and is going to be. And sometimes we accept that. So I think it's good for us to say this out loud, is that we do see this as a big issue. It's a significant issue. And I think we need to continue to fight on this issue.
Okay.
Because I think a lot of parents, they may be fatigued, discouraged, feeling a little hopeless that they can do anything on this.
Yeah. Well, when you say, okay, I want you to explain a little bit more what you're talking about being socialized, because isn't part of it that we do have to just realize this is actually where we're at? And so in some ways, like say, well, technology is just something that is in our culture. We have to learn how to do this life with it. And like you were saying, to push back on it. So what do you mean by that?
Yeah, so this is where I would make a distinction between description and prescription, right? What is and what should be. So in one sense, yeah, this is where we're at, but we're just simply describing the situation. We want to move from description to prescription. Okay, how should we live with this stuff? There's the question of, should we live with this stuff? What do we reject? What do we accept? Are there things that are immoral in and of themselves or inherently wrong? Of course, that's what we'd want to stay away from. But something like technology it's not immoral to use technology. We actually would say, in the good sense, it's a reflection of being made in God's image, right? We are creators ourselves. We take God's good world and we create wonderful things from it. And technology can enhance our life in so many ways, and has. We're using technology now. But we can look at different technologies this is a technology, this microphone that's sitting in front of me. And this is also a technology, the screen. These technologies are not identical, and they're not equal in how they impact me. And so we got to think through the different kind of technologies and ask the question, okay, how should we live with this thing? So that's a good opportunity to make that distinction.
Clarify that.
Yeah.
So this issue of technology, we're just going to keep talking about it on the Maven Parent Podcast, different ways and different times and different aspects of it. But what we did this last week was get on our Facebook group. And if you're not on that, we'd love for you to join, because we do talk and ask questions and
put out resources,
all kinds of things on our Facebook group. So go on Facebook, technology. And
that's an older technology for the older people who are listening right now.
That's a parent platform, I'm pretty sure. So we can have these conversations and our kids won't see them because they're most likely not on Facebook. So anyway, go on our Facebook. It's just Maven.
Just go to look up, just search for Maven on Facebook. You'll find it.
You'll find us.
You'll see the black M logo.
Mm-hmm. So we put out a question this last week to parents, what are your biggest questions when it comes to technology? And we got some awesome questions that came in.
Yeah, and they're questions that parents are wrestling with right now. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of you are going to resonate with these questions. They're questions that I know, in fact, even on some of the questions, other people chimed in and said, that's a great question. That was, I would ask that same question. So we want to jump into those questions and answer those questions. And I think we're going to start with two that are, the answer is a little more quick kind of answer that we can give. And then the third question that we want to deal with is a little longer and a little more involved. So,
but we eventually want to tackle all these questions. So keep them coming. If you weren't on, you can still go to Facebook on the page, jump on and ask additional questions.
Yeah.
So the first one we're going to tackle today is from Tammy. And this is what Tammy wrote. And this one, Tammy, I really, really resonated with because this is how you start. My problem is I don't understand technology. Amen, Tammy. I'm with you on that.
Amen, Tammy. She is definitely with you on that.
Yes. So I'll stop there. Every time, this is Tammy again. Every time I get my own computer phone, I get confused and frustrated. Amen to that too. I know just enough to be dangerous. And then she put an emoji. My kids are tech geniuses.
Tammy, did you talk to Erin before you wrote this? Because
I actually wrote this as Tammy.
Oh, you're Tammy.
No.
You're Tammy.
No, I'm not.
I
But
didn't know
I'm
you
just
had a-
apparently we're best friends
I didn't know
because
you had a fake Facebook
I could
account.
have written this. Okay, she said my kids are tech geniuses. They are always 10 steps ahead of me. We talk about tech safety all the time. I need a reputable, easy to navigate app/program to monitor their electronics. One that monitors phones/computers, websites, texts, email, apps, all the things, but simplifies for non-tech savvy parents like me.
Yeah, here's my answer to you and to Tammy. Good luck.
Oh, whatever.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Yeah, this is one of the challenges is because our kids are often more tech savvy because, of course, they are digital natives and not digital immigrants. I guess
like
would
us.
be the contrast there. Yeah. Okay, so I want to give a couple of resources here. And there's a lot of kind of web filtering stuff out there, router protection, those kind of things. So there's a lot to filter through. Some of these are really good at protection, but they're really difficult to set up. It might take you half a day to set that up. And I'm guessing...
that sounds miserable.
Yes. So if I could recommend one thing in particular, it would be a program called Canopy. And you could just do a search for Canopy internet filtering or internet protection, and the Canopy website will come up. You can go through some of their information there. They've, I think, got some videos on there that will give you an idea of what Canopy does. But Canopy is fairly easy to install for, non-tech geniuses. It's reasonably priced. There's a monthly fee. But the good thing about Canopy is it's going to be a content filter, and it also blocks stuff within apps, because that's one of the challenges is that you have some filters that will block websites, but then you can open up an app and find all kinds of inappropriate content there. So this helps to block it out and within a particular app. So let's say you're using, your kid's using Instagram, and there, of course, maybe there's risque pictures on there. It will replace it with, it'll cover it with like a white square. And so it can filter stuff within apps. Of course, it's not perfect. It won't catch everything, but it'll catch a lot. And this one's pretty easy to install, and you don't have to be a tech genius. So that is maybe one of the best ones out there overall. There are going to be others that you look at and say, man, this might be really good at this particular thing, but there's going to be other drawbacks. So I think given Tammy's honesty about her own skills, Canopy is probably going to be the best resource out there. There's another one called Bark that is good and a lot of parents use. I'm not sure that one's as easy to set up, but it's not as difficult as some of the other things. But that is good because it filters stuff out even when your kids are using cellular service. It's not just filtering out your home, your Wi-Fi at home through your router, but it's doing it through the cellular, or it'll filter out content even if your kid's on their smartphone and they're not, on your Wi-Fi. Okay, but I think it's a little more challenging to set up. Yeah. So those are two good options. You could also just simply do a search and do your own research on this. Just type in best internet filters for kids, and different tech companies or, bloggers or whatever have written articles, and they'll, give their suggestions. And so you can read through some of that. But I would definitely look into, if you don't want to spend a lot, I've done some of my own research on this, and Canopy is one that we could definitely recommend. So that's what I would encourage.
And as far as asking, you suggested Googling. I have nothing to offer as far as what this like technology stuff. Okay, obviously Brett is the one who does this stuff in our house, but what I would say, Tammy, is I would start asking like your pastor and your friends and just people in your community and say, hey, what filter stuff do you use for your kids? And see what they say. And if I'm not mistaken, Tammy, probably a lot of them will say, oh, we actually don't have one. Or they'll say we tried this one or whatever. And so you might learn some things that they've tried and it hasn't worked, or you might actually find some really great ones. But I was thinking about if you did this, if you asked, and I'm gonna do this myself, Tammy, so you can let us know if you get some good answers. But I was thinking how that might actually start conversations and motivate other parents around you to start thinking of this. And then as you discover things, and you can keep asking questions and then say, oh, I tried this Canopy one, or I tried this one called Bark, and it's been working really well. And so I think even as we talk in our communities, that can help to spur one another on towards this. Because, I know a lot of parents have tried, failed, all of that. And then some parents just aren't aware of what's out there. So maybe even by asking questions, you can spur other parents on to this.
Yeah, that's great. So thanks for the question. And I know that a lot of other parents have that same question. So, okay. So another Facebook user, I guess is the proper term, Jessica, she said this: parents that don't see eye to eye, right? This is the issue. Parents that don't see eye to eye. One has super strong convictions about media and the other doesn't. How do you find a middle ground? This is another common question because moms and dads aren't on the same page, or sometimes it's parents and grandparents aren't on the same page, right? And so we've got different convictions about these things, and especially if it is your spouse, that is difficult. So what do you do, Erin, when we disagree?
Well, I do actually think the principle of what you do when you disagree can kind of go into all different topics. So discipline, when you don't agree on discipline, when you don't agree on eating habits, when you don't agree on. So what do you do when there's a disagreement? Well, I think in general, you attempt to talk and work it out and come to, some kind of resolution, or come to some kind of middle ground. But I do think, especially in this issue of technology, if you're in two different places, and I would say that, I guess I would say this too with discipline and other things, but that you should learn together on the issue. And then that might help to bring you together. So what do I mean by learning together? Like what?
Well, I was going to jump in to kind of go with your first point.
Okay.
Before you get to the second wise point. Talking about it. And some people might think, okay, well, we've talked about it, right? And that's why we know we disagree. But I think what we want to do also is enhance those conversations, help those to be more constructive. So I think what might be good is to reason as you talk, reason together through it. And the first step could be getting it down on paper and saying, okay, here is my view on this. And then writing down, why do I hold that view? So for instance, kids shouldn't have, shouldn't take their smartphone to bed. Or when we're eating dinner, kids shouldn't be on an iPad or whatever it is. And then answer the question, why? Or if it's at dinner, kids should be on the iPad. Or at 12 years old, my kid should get a smartphone. Whatever your view is, I think writing those things down, but then the reasoning part, I think, is important. And we're not good at reasoning well as Americans. I mean, Americans are very anti-intellectual. We don't know how to think well. And so we'll just think, hey, I got this view, and we throw it out there and you disagree, and we just kind of like go back and forth without really having a reasonable conversation and saying, okay, here are my reasons why. So, and what that might help do is foster like some understanding. It could foster some more listening, and then fosters a little more understanding. And it can help with us maybe seeing that maybe some of our views are unreasonable, without the other person having to say, look, you're unreasonable, you're being illogical, whatever. But sometimes we need to kind of discover that for ourselves. And so that might be something you have to do on this situation, because we would say that this is a big enough issue where we got to take this one seriously. And so it would be good to maybe sketch that out on paper and reason through it. What are the reasons you hold the views that you do? Okay.
Yeah, it's a big enough issue, going off of what you just said, that parents, we need to work to come together on this issue. Yeah. It's not like one of those issues where it's like, well, dad prefers this, mom prefers that. So when dad makes dinner, he's going to order pizza. And when mom makes dinner, we're going to have, veggie lasagna or something. Yeah. It's not this kind of preferential stuff.
Have we ever had veggie lasagna?
No, I was just trying to think of two extremes. Like, I was
gonna say, if we have, I blocked that out of my mind because that sounds horrible. And I was just wondering if we needed to talk about that.
No.
Okay. Good.
So, but it is one of those issues that it's worth spending time on, because you need to come together as much as possible to be a united front with your kids on this issue. Because there are issues, like I said, that it's not as big of a deal if mom and dad disagree on it. But like another issue is discipline. If mom and dad disagree on this and can't come together, then kids get all kinds of mixed messages on what's right and what's supposed to happen. And same with technology. We want to send a clear message to our kids about this is what's right and this is how we should handle these things. So it's going to take some work. And I was thinking when you were talking how so oftentimes in American culture, people lead with, well, I feel da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
And so what you're suggesting to reason together goes beyond feelings. And it's, well, the fact is that this and this and this. And so it goes beyond maybe our own personal experience. Maybe if one parent is like, technology is not a big deal, it's not a big struggle for me, so I don't think we have to make it a big issue with kids.
Yeah, and here might be a question for both in this discussion, is what books or what articles, what research have we done to look into this issue of technology and to think more carefully about it? And if your spouse has all of these ideas, or you have all of these ideas about technology or kind of rules, but you've never really done much reading, or you haven't read any books on this, or you haven't looked at any research, then you might want to humble yourself and realize that maybe your views aren't well supported. Okay. And so we've got to be able to have those kind of conversations with each other so we can work past merely the fact that we disagree and get to some real truth and evidence-based steps. And so there might be beliefs that we hold about technology or about its either impact on us or its lack of impact on us that are not well-founded beliefs. And so we may need to go through a process of renewing our minds with some truth. And that's where I think you were going with the next helpful practical tip, which was I'm setting you up here, Erin.
about learning together. And I was just going to say, to maybe this does go well, but I'm thinking about blended families, which we have experience in that as well. And so this can be difficult when you're trying to come together with, a spouse or a ex-spouse or, step parents in another house or whatever. And so my encouragement there would be to go towards what we're going to talk about next and learning together. And even if you're like, I could never get my ex-wife or ex-husband or the spouse of whatever situation you're in, I could never get them to read a book with me or whatever. So, but you can send video clips maybe of a news story about.
Or some of these, we're going to talk about some authors.
Yeah,
here.
we're going to talk about a bunch of resources.
Video clips of interviews with some of these authors.
Yes. Yeah.
So.
Interviews with someone who has a lot of knowledge in this and the impact it's having on kids, or, something like that. A letter that comes home from school and you could send, hey, we got this letter home. I've been thinking about it and I found this article on this topic. Would you read it and tell me what you think?
Yeah.
So anyway, so that moves us to resources.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
What you just said made me think. For parents, the parent who ends up giving more autonomy on this it's going to undermine the rules or the boundaries that the other parent is wanting to hold to. This is why it's so important to work hard to get on the same page, because if I've got a rule, or if you say, hey, kids, I don't want you to have your smartphone in bed. And I'm like, it's okay. Don't worry about it. I'm not going to enforce your rule. And then the kids are what are they going to do? They're going to tend towards,
of course,
the freedom.
Yes.
Right. And so they're going to blow your rule off and they're going to blow you off. And so there's a larger issue here of the undermining of the other parent's authority. And even if we disagree, we have to agree to be united. And that we've had that rule as a couple, is like, even if you disagree with me when I'm in the middle of talking to one of the kids, if you step in and disagree with me there. Now, of course, we're not talking about something like if I'm, I don't know, harming the kid or something like that, or being verbally abusive, which doesn't happen, just to be clear. I'm just trying to give some examples.
I'm glad you're the example in this. Usually I'm the one you throw under the bus. So this feels good.
No, I'm setting those examples aside.
Right. When you would need to
intervene.
Yes.
Aside.
When you need to intervene for
the protection of your kid.
But in general, of course, the majority of situations are you might just disagree with your spouse in how they're handling a situation, but it's better to let them handle it and later on talk to them about it.
Yeah. So
when emotions are not so high.
Yeah. So that idea that if you're not on the same page, you can end up undermining the parental authority of the other parent. That should be enough to get us to say, okay, let's work hard to be on the same page.
Yeah.
And so there are plenty of resources that can help us.
Yeah, which makes me think of grandparents too, because I know some of you listening might have grandparents that don't see all the issues with technology maybe that you see. I mean, this could be flipped, right? There could be grandparents listening who are like, my kids are letting my grandkids, do whatever on technology, and I'm worried.
I think that's more of it.
Yeah.
More grandparents are expressing their concern because they grew up in a different era, which we can often dismiss. It's actually good that they grew up in a different era. So they're not shaped. They're not simply absorbing everything that's going on right now uncritically. And so sometimes they're actually more critical thinkers about this.
Yeah. But there could be the option. Actually, I'm thinking of some friends we know that it was when they dropped off at grandma and grandpa's, there was like no limits on the iPads.
Oh, yeah.
It's that sort of thing. So again, trying to reason with them, trying to learn with them, show them things that are informed on the position that you have, like why you're doing it. And that can help so much more to bring the other person to agreement with you, or, bring them on your side and at least see, hey, I've put some thought into this. I'm not just going off of, instinct or just being emotional about it or being scared about it or something.
That's where grandparents, if you're a grandparent who's listening, you have to be careful about not undermining the authority of your kids with their kids. And so it's not okay for mom and dad to say, here's the boundary. When, they're at your house, grandma and grandpa, we don't want them on the iPad for more than an hour. And then grandma and grandpa blow that off. That's not okay. And so, because there's a deeper issue there of the undermining of parental authority, and parents get undermined by this culture at every turn. And as Christians, and in the church and the Christian community, we should be doing everything we can to enhance and protect and strengthen parental authority. Because as parental authority gets weakened, it's not good for the culture.
Yeah.
And for our kids. Okay. So now we're got some resources.
We're still talking about technology. Okay. Yeah, we have some resources. So there are a ton of good resources out there. So
yeah, and
I've got
a huge stack of resources, book resources right here in front of me. And you got one book over there.
Well, because you pulled out all of our books. I love how you say that's your stack.
Okay,
those are all of our books. I just
wanted to look like super intellectual here.
And I have one on my side. So learn together is our advice. Do some homework on this issue if you can together as parents to inform yourselves so that you become the expert. Now, Tammy's question about not being a technology expert, I'm totally with you there. But we do need to be on the issue of technology, how it shapes us.
We have to be learners.
We have to be learners, and we do need to be ahead of our kids in that way of knowing what we're dealing with and becoming, kind of experts in our home of why we have to be careful, why we have to be guarded, why we have to have boundaries and limits on technology. So let's go through a few of these resources.
Okay, I'm trying to categorize them here. And I would say this. I think parents at this point, because it's such a pervasive issue and it's all around us and it's a constant challenge, I think it'd be good for parents to make it a goal that you read at least one book on technology per year. That would be the minimum. Read a book each year on technology, because what it'll do is it'll help you keep up with current thoughts on this, some of the research, but it will also continue to renew your mind on how to think about this, because the culture will simply erode your convictions. And so, all right. And so that it'll help with that, but then it'll also hopefully help parents get on the same page. Okay, can I start here?
Yeah. Now, quick note, are we going to put these titles in our show notes so people listening, if they're driving or on a walk, and we mention a resource, they can go to our show notes and find those?
No, we're actually going to make it more difficult for them to have to listen to this podcast again.
Well, I'm asking you because I'm not going to do that, but can you put that in the show notes?
Well, Micah, can we make sure that we get these books that we're about to recommend, can we get these in the show notes? Links to every one of them in the show notes. You can handle that, right? You're technologically savvy.
Okay, I'll help, but
Okay.
I don't know how to put them in the show notes is what I'm saying. Because back to Tammy's question, I don't.
Yes.
I don't
Okay,
love
we'll try to make
technology.
it as easy as possible
Okay.
for you non-tech.
Okay,
savvy
so let's
people.
go through the resources. So
Yeah, and if you just an easy way to do it, if you just remember the title, you could just search it on Amazon or something. But we will definitely also link to them. Okay, I think, and I'm trying to categorize these here, but I think for parents who really want to understand the serious impact of technology on their kids and the addiction that's possible, and what's going on, like biochemically in kind of some of the what we see in the neuroscience research. These are the books I would suggest. And if a parent isn't taking technology and the threat of technology seriously, I'd say start here. And one of those books is called Irresistible. Irresistible by Adam Alter, Alter. The Rise of Addictive Technology in the Business of Keeping Us Hooked. This is one of the more eye-opening books, and it scares you a little bit in a good way, because it helps give you insight into kind of behavioral addiction and how technology gets into. One of the chapters is called the biology. I think it's the biology of. Well, there it is. The biology of behavioral addiction. And so it gets into some of the biology stuff. And it's not like overly technical or anything like that. It's for the layman. And this one will help you see that this is a legitimate threat. Okay, so Irresistible by Adam Alter. There's another book that's a really, I think, good book. And it's
this
been
is
a real
one of my
popular
favorite ones. Yeah.
Yeah, Glow Kids by Nicholas Carteret. I'm not.
See why we have to link them in our show notes?
Carteros. I think that's how you pronounce it. I haven't actually listened to any interviews with him, so I haven't heard anyone else pronounce it. So we'll go with Carteros, Kardaras. But Glow Kids, how screen addiction is hijacking our kids and how to break the trance. And this one is really good. He again goes through some of the neuroscience stuff, our brains, and he talks about video games, because we got some questions on on some video game stuff, and so this is a really good one. And then along that line too, this one has a lot of practical stuff. It's called Reset Your Child's Brain, a 4-week plan to end meltdowns, raise grades, and boost social skills by reversing the effects of electronic screen time. And this is one I have not read the whole thing. I have skimmed large parts of it. And there is some really helpful practical stuff in here. And again, it does fit, it weaves in some of the research and stuff, but also gives parents some of the really practical tools. Talks about fasting from technology and kind of effective fasts and things like that. So those three I think are really helpful in terms of really understanding the challenge and the threat that technology is. If you need help with smartphones, let me give you 2 quick recommendations. One is by Tony Reinke, 12 Ways Your Phone is Changing You. Okay, get that one. That one's really helpful on smartphones. And then particularly for parents, this one is good for just anybody, but it'll also help you as a parent. But then particularly for parents, there's a ministry out there called Axis that has a lot of good resources. And they've got a book called Smartphone Sanity, a proven plan to protect your kids, build trust, and bring smartphone balance to your home. And there's a lot of good practical stuff in here as well. So that's smartphones. Now, 2 books that we will recommend all the time that are a little more broad, but there's a lot of good practical stuff. that are really helpful in thinking about the nature of technology are these two. The first one is The Tech-Wise Family by Andy Crouch. Everyday Steps for Putting Technology in its Proper Place. Must read. It's a fairly short read. That's a must read.
And that one, I love that one, The Tech-Wise Family. That's technology in general. But then what's the one, because he has one for teenagers that we've bought for Micah and Paige.
Yes, it's the
Tech-Wise Kid or something, or anyways,
something like the Tech-Wise Student, or something like
him
that.
and his daughter wrote that book. And anyway, that's a good book.
Oh no, it's called My Tech-Wise Life.
Oh yeah,
My Tech-Wise
yes, that's
Life.
it. So that's a great one because that's talking to the students. So that's like, hey, you read that book, teenager. I'll read this one. We'll go out to dinner. You can choose where and talk about it together, kind of thing. So that's a good resource for if you have a teenager that you're trying to, and I would encourage you to do this if you have kids that are old enough to read some of these books, is to have them read the book together.
Yeah, and a similar one, you want a slide that Mike had just brought it out.
Yeah, My Tech-Wise Life.
My Tech-Wise Life. So
And
get those together. Adults read this one, have your students read this one, and then it fosters some good discussion.
Yeah, Amy. That's
Amy
written by
Crouch.
Amy Crouch and Andy Crouch. So
Which-
daughter and father.
In a similar vein, one of our favorite books ever in the history of humanity is A Practical Guide to Culture that John Stone Street and I wrote together, and then A Student's Guide to Culture, where these line up and parents and students can read their version together, and it fosters discussion. Now, this isn't just on technology. It actually, I think, helps you step back and see some of the larger issues, the impact of culture, but we do have a chapter in part 3 on entertainment. And for parents, there are some real practical action steps there dealing with entertainment. So
And
that's another good
actually,
resource.
I'm thinking too, like youth pastors, or if you are volunteering at your church with young people, you could do a book club,
Or we've had youth pastors have their leaders read practical guide, and then in small groups, their
students.
students
Yeah.
are going through a student's guide.
Yeah.
So that's a great resource. And then one of our favorite authors and a great friend and someone who has a lot to say on this is Kathy Cook, Koch. Her book, Screens and Teens, Connecting with Our Kids in a Wireless World. This really gets a little bit deeper into what technology can do, why it's appealing to our kids, how parents and kids can really think through some of the lies. That's one thing that's really helpful about this book, is she outlines some of the lies that technology gets us to believe. So that's a must read. A classic on entertainment is, and it's prophetic, is Neil Postman's book, Amusing Ourselves to Death. Public Discourse in the Age of Show Business. This is written like 35 years ago, before the explosion of technology, but he saw things about just television and the screen and how it was impacting us. This one will take you deeper. This one's a little bit more of a kind of cultural analysis. It's going to be a little more philosophical. It's really good, but this one's going to be a little more work to read. But man, if you can get to this one, this is going to help you think carefully about technology and entertainment in particular. Here it was updated. You can see one of our small animals chewed our copy here.
Our
but
cat.
I wanted to show the updated version, Amusing Ourselves to Death. Okay, now not everything. There's a couple more books. I don't want to overwhelm you with too many books, but
Already did.
we'll just say, okay. So just choose one out of all these, okay, folks? From the Garden to the City by John Dyer, The Redeeming and Corrupting Power of Technology. And this is really trying to, I think, lay out more of just a biblical worldview on technology, which is very good. Neat. That's so needed. And then this one called Growing Up Social, Raising Relational Kids in a Screen-Driven World by Gary Chapman and Arlene Pelican. I think it's pronounced Pelican or Pelican. But again, we'll link to it. That's another good one. And Arlene actually has some good, I think she has a video course online that you can purchase, and that's good stuff as well. And I believe she may have been on Monique Dusson and Krista Bontrager's All the Things. It's still called All the Things, right?
I think so.
Oh my gosh, I should know this. But I think they interviewed her
Okay.
on this. Okay, and then these are going to be good books. They're going to help us know about the dangers. But we want to do more than that. We want to think carefully about how we can even redeem some of our technology. Here are two books that are helpful in that. One is called Of Games and God, a Christian exploration of video games. This is the only book like this out there that I'm familiar with that really tries to say, hey, let's lay out a Christian worldview of video games. We need a lot more thinking about this because video games is a multi-billion-dollar industry and tons of our kids are on video games. We need to think carefully about it and not just say it's all bad, but what does the Christian worldview bring to that? And then Frank Turek wrote a good book called Hollywood Heroes, How Your Favorite Movies Reveal God. And that's one thing that we want to do as we engage with entertainment is not just say, no, right? This is all bad, but we want to actually point out how movies tell stories, and these stories have these sometimes incredible themes, and there's a lot to be learned, a lot to be modeled through those stories. So those kind of books need to be read as well.
Yeah, and these are a lot of resources, but I hope you see that they aren't all. Some of them we need to know the dangers of technology, but then a lot of these too. This is why if you could read some over time, it helps you to develop a whole Christian worldview of how we can approach technology with our kids, show them that we don't just think it's all bad and terrible. And so they're growing up in this technological world and they feel like their parents are just saying no to everything. We want to say yes to what's good. We want to help equip them to navigate this stuff as they get older and start to navigate it on their own. And just to give an overall formation as a family of how we can view technology and navigate it together.
Yeah. So we've only covered 2 questions. We thought these were the shorter questions, but they were really important questions. So thanks to Tammy and Jessica for these questions. Hopefully you see there are a ton of resources out there, but we have to put some work into it. We're going to have to invest for the sake of our kids. And it's worth the investment because this challenge is not going away. And so we want to encourage you. There's a lot of help out there, but we're going to deal with more of these technology questions in coming episodes of the Maven Parent Podcast because there are lots of other aspects of this that we need to navigate. Maven exists to help the next generation know truth, pursue goodness, and create beauty for the cause of Christ. To find out more, check out maventruth.com.